Welcome to Atypical Truth. I am your host, Erica Jolene. I take seriously Walter Fisher's contention that humans are storytelling beings. I created this podcast to amplify the stories of people in my community, the community of rare diseases, disabilities, and complex medical conditions. Storytelling as research allows me to foreground the human component of disability. In the larger project that this presentation is based on, I incorporate listeners and guest survey responses to understand how a podcast might function as a community-building resource. However, today, I story the experience of creating this podcast. The sounds of a sweet lullaby echo down the hallway, serenading the rooms of women like myself who are in active labor. A nurse tells me that they play that song every time a baby is born. I smile at the thought of how that sound would soon float through our room, just as that same nurse would be placing my daughter on my chest for us to begin a lifetime of bonding. The familiar sounds of that muffled lullaby echo down the hallway, and everything on the peripheral, it grows blurry as I anxiously await the most precious sound of all, the cries of my newborn child. But the cries never come. I try catching a glimpse of my baby, who is now across the room, surrounded by a chaotic crowd of gowns and scrubs. I turned to my husband for a sign of reassurance, and I met with the look of sheer fear on his face. I quickly look away. I'm supposed to be crying tears of joy and happiness. This lullaby is finally playing for me and the arrival of my child. Instead, I'm frozen in fear. There are no tears. There's just silence. I'm taking in every detail of this moment because something's wrong. Finally, she's in my arms. The faint and distant sound of the lullaby plays on. This time it isn't for me. It's for the next new mom. And I wonder if that other new mom is spending this precious skin-to-skin time examining her child as meticulously as I am. I gaze down at my child with worry. I instinctively know that something is not right. I want so bad to just be basking in the glory of her perfection, her 10 little toes, her tiny little hands, her perfect head of hair. But I can't help to examine her with concern. Why didn't she cry? Where is all of her hair? Why is her head so small? Why won't she move? I lock the door behind me. I turn the lights down low and take a deep breath. For the past 2 months, this 5-foot by 5-foot lactation room is the only sense of privacy I've come to know. I wipe down all the surfaces, disinfecting the dried droplets of breast milk from the mom who pumped in here before me. Hooked up to a machine like a dairy cow, I sit back and I try to relax. From the crack under the door, there's a blinding bright light that bleeds in. It's interrupted frequently by the shadows from the bustling footsteps of nurses and doctors as they hurry back and forth from one NICU pod to the other. I can still hear the phantom sounds of the alarms from the monitors of the 12 incubators surrounding us in our daughter's pod. 12 little babies, all with differing, life-sustaining needs. One is waiting on a kidney transplant. They've lived here on dialysis for 9 months. Another needs a ventilator. They came earthside 14 weeks too soon. Mine requires a cocktail of meds, seizure monitoring, oxygen, and a feeding tube. They all need something more than us mommies can give them ourselves. And so we pump that precious liquid gold until we feel like our breasts will burst. Because it's the only thing that we can do. It's the only thing we have even a minuscule amount of control over when it comes to the health and well-being of our children. 3 drops in and 4 ounces to go. It's time for me to get comfortable. So I pop my earbuds in and I find my podcast for the day and press play. My friends, who I've never actually met in real life, are now in my ears and deep in conversation about their favorite murders. And if murder doesn't feel like a good fit, I can cruise on down the road to my other friend and relax as her soothing voice tells me stories of unusual criminal acts. And yes, I realize this probably sounds very morbid to outsiders, to go from one extremely distressing situation only to hear about another. But this is my drug of choice. This is my break from the emotional toll of NICU life. I really enjoy the opportunity to just immerse myself inside someone else's story. When I press play, I'm instantly catapulted somewhere else, somewhere far away from the alarms and the herds of spectators donned in sterile gowns, somewhere with a different set of worries and a different set of fears that are very much not my own. Somewhere where I get to be the audience, not the main character. My entry into the world of being a parent and caregiver was scary and unexpected. Despite having been born with birth defects and growing up with disabilities, I never once entertained the thought that it would happen to my children. The wildest thing about all of this is the realization that the sum of my life experiences, they prepare me to be exactly the mother my children needed me to be. The word atypical was one I began to hear on repeat throughout our children's lives. Initially, I despised this word and all that it stood for because it just felt like a medically PC way of saying different from everyone else. But really, the most despised aspect of this word was understanding that it meant we were heading down a path rarely traveled by others. A path where no miracle drug exists, a path with no road signs directing what turns to take or advising what decisions to make, nor any indication of what the future might hold. Instead of a fork in the road, our path led us directly to the abyss where science ends and hope begins. Witnessing my kids smile, use their hands to activate a toy, or to simply look at me and hold that long, loving eye contact, their ability to accomplish these seemingly simple tasks, it's taught me to appreciate the beauty in the unknown, the beauty in a life unlived by so many others. Thanks to them, I began to wear the word atypical with pride and truly embrace the uniqueness of our atypical lives. The truth component of the title was derived from my desire to shed some light into the lives of those impacted by disabilities. I do crave to hear stories from my peers living in this life alongside me, but I also want to hear more stories about the people and professionals who help support us, and when their support isn't enough, they show up to advocate with us. Currently, there are 19 different primary categories for podcasts, with an additional 91 different subcategories, which include subjects like alternative health, mental health, fitness, and nutrition. But disability, it isn't one of them. This lack of availability and access to disability-themed podcasts, it only mirrors the lack of representation and access that disabled people face in all other aspects of life. I take my frustrations to my peers in a variety of podcasting groups on social media. I detail the issues surrounding the ableist nature of the podcasting world. I explain how this results in a lack of representation for those on the search to hear their stories portrayed in this form of media. Instead of gaining allies, there's a long thread of comments from non-disabled people who are telling me that disabled is a bad word. These comments inform society that being disabled equates to being undesirable, which only continues to perpetuate this negative stigma of the word disabled and the idea of living a disabled life. I turn to the source itself, the giants in the corporate world who determine the podcast categories. And there I must rely on a voting system within the Spotify community for my suggestion of a disability-themed category to even be considered, not even close to implementation. I think of the words from a fellow caregiver and recently retired podcaster when she shared, "I hope you light the world on fire for your kids and don't reach the harsh reality that I have, that no matter the battles we fight, no matter the platforms we stand on, it's never enough." I refuse to lose hope. 120 people from all over the world have voted in support of my suggestion. That's 120 opportunities for our stories to ignite the spark for others to have these conversations on their own. So I continue to share the podcast and amplify the atypical truths of my peers in the disabled community. And I do so with hope that I will soon see a day when we do light the world on fire for our kids and for yours.